Hello, my beautiful friends, family, community. Thank you for joining me as I share some information about the dark night of the soul. Who out there has been through the dark night of the soul? It is a process that we need to go through for transformation, for ascension. It is a necessary part of alchemy. It is something that, unfortunately, fortunately, depending on how you look at it, needs to happen for us to shift from the old into the new. Now, the dark night of the soul is very specific. There have been times in my life where I felt like I went through it, even though maybe I didn't know what it meant, but I suffered from severe depression for most of my life, actually. It's important to know what the difference is between depression or going through a really difficult time and the dark night of the soul. This is my interpretation of it. This is my experience again of it. This is what I can offer as far as a bit of guidance if you're going through it, or if you feel like it's coming, or maybe you've gone through it already. But essentially, it is a time of deep, profound transformation that needs to happen for us to move into the ascension process. Now, when we look again at, and I mentioned this many times, when we look at the timeline of humanity, of our collective, I'm sure I would not be surprised if a lot of people have gone through the dark night of the soul in the last few years. Because of recent events in our society, in our culture, it has almost been in tandem with our own personal journey, our own personal transformation. So everything that has been happening in our external world is also happening in our internal world as well as individuals. So when we were given this time to go inward, to isolate, to detach, we were given that time for a reason. And remember, nothing happens by chance, right? Nothing happens by chance. So we were given a time to go inward, and not all of us had gone through this dark night of the soul. I did. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be surprised if many of you or many others in the world didn't experience this also, because I feel that it did offer a period of major transformation, and the energy was intense over the last few years especially. And we were transforming. I feel that the ascension process has sped up. I feel that my own journey specifically has led me to this moment in time where I did go through the dark night of the soul. And I feel that from my own journey, my own experience, that led me to the point of going through that transformation was years and years of searching and doing my own transformative work in the background. So I would say a closet spiritualist, because I was very private about the work that I did. I was very curious. I was open to trying anything, and I did a lot. I did do a lot of different types of healing, types of learning, types of exploration. I was deep in it, on the sidelines. And I feel that because of the work that I had been doing, everything was very subtle, and it wasn't until this last few years, 2-3 years, where everything really sped up and a lot changed within myself. So I think it was probably the start of 2020, I would say, where I went into a deep state of, I thought, just depression. There was a recipe that was happening, a recipe for disaster or a recipe for change, however you want to position it. I'm going to say for change. It felt like a disaster at the time. It was not easy. And looking back at it, this moment in time played out perfectly. It really did. Even though in that moment I was so confused. And I'm going to break down the steps of the dark night of the soul. First off, what is the dark night of the soul? It is not depression. It is not anxiety. It is not feeling lost, even though it does, I feel, have a lot of those elements intertwined within the process of the dark night of the soul. The dark night of the soul is the process of alchemy. It is something that we need to go through. If you're going through the process, if you're going through your own transformational process, it is something that you have to go through in order to be reborn, essentially, and be reborn in your light. So it is essentially that cocoon, that transformational process of going through the really deep stuff. And there's a lot of confusion, there is depression, mood swings, things from the past that shows up that we have to face, that we have to conquer. And we must remember, when we do this work, this transformational work, we have to face our past. We have to go into the spaces within us that are uncomfortable, that are dark, that are scary. And if we are still being triggered by that, if we still have an emotional response, it still means that we need to do the work to cycle that through. If you have maybe traumas from childhood, or a relationship with like a parent or a relative or something that is playing out still, where you think of that person or that time or that incident or whatever it is, and it triggers something within you, like an anger or a hatred or a sadness or just something uncomfortable, it still means that there's work that needs to be done. And sometimes this takes years of, I'd say, the longer process, but the dark night of the soul, I feel, for me, took a year. And it was very uncomfortable. So the symptoms, again, a lot of sleep, very tired. So you might sleep a lot. Get rest if this is the case. A lot of confusion. So one day you might feel fine, the next day you'll be, I call it, in the ditch. So you might feel fine and you might have clarity, and then maybe you'll fall back into it for maybe a week or two, and then you'll have clarity, and then you'll go back into it. So you're like just going in and out of all of these different scenarios and situations. To essentially, your energy is shifting. You're shifting. You're wringing out the old, right? Like just like an old washcloth, like you're being wrung out, like all the old energy it's surfacing for you to process and let go. It's like a big dump, like a big energy dump. A lot of memories will come up, a lot of questions, a lot of confusion. And again, this can go on for about a year. It could be a couple months. Everyone's different, but mine was, I would say, a year. And I was very dedicated to the process of making sure that it was done right. And I didn't know at the time that I was going through that until I looked into, I listened to some podcasts of the dark night of the soul specifically, and what it is, what it means. I thought I already went through it. I thought I already went through it a couple times, actually. So this was completely on another level. And you'll know, because again, it is so dark and deep. So if you're going through this process, the best advice that I could give anyone is to take care of yourself. A lot of self-care, be patient, know that the energy is moving through you, to not become that energy. There were some days, truthfully, I didn't feel like I was going to make it. I didn't feel like I was going to survive. I didn't want to survive. It was so excruciating and so uncomfortable and so dark, and it brought up all of the darkness that I already had been going through and amplified it. What it felt like was times 1,000. Like it was just another level. There were moments where I was just screaming with like just this stuff it was coming up as like a big energy purge almost, in a way. But then the next day I would feel better. So it was just quite a play on the psychological aspect of our mind and on our reality. And it really made me look at reality differently. It made me look at myself differently. It made me look at situations differently. But this is the thing, is that your reality and perception will shift drastically within yourself, within how you perceive relationships, how you see the world. You will come out of this reborn. You will come out of this in a new light and more connected with yourself than ever before. And you need to take time alone to do this, to go through this process. It's not something that you can call in. It's not something that you can say, okay, dark night of the soul, let's do this. I'd like to just get this done with and get it over with and move on to the next part of my life. It doesn't happen like that. It has to come from a place of almost like you're in a period of being defeated, like where everything, for me, and this is again my own story, and if you have experiences, please leave them below, because I love hearing stories and other experiences from things like this. But for me, it was almost the universe was pushing me into this time in my life. I feel it was part because of the work that I was doing, part because I was ready. Even though I didn't feel ready, I was ready. And also because I was in a place where I was very defeated by my old story. And I was trying to make my old story work. I was trying to make my old story fit. I was trying to make my old story still remain a part of my success story in a way, or something of that nature. It was not the direction that I was meant to be on. It was not something I needed to force to make it work, essentially. That was my old career path. That was my old identity. That was my old paradigm that I had built, and it was built on false information, or a false identity that I had been living in for a long time, my whole life. And it was something that I constructed based on what I thought other people wanted of me, what I thought the society would accept of me, what I thought other people would accept of me as well. And it wasn't at all my truth. And so because I was on that path for such a long time, but I was slowly starting to dismantle that, I was slowly starting to challenge it, but also in a place of least resistance, where I was basically giving up. And I needed to pack everything in and stop what I was doing because it wasn't working. And the universe was pushing me in that direction. And I was also pushing myself in that direction, because it was, again, at a time where everything that I thought was of my reality was falling apart. And it was not at all the reality that I thought it was, based on a bunch of false beliefs, limitations, lack, struggle. When you go through the dark night of the soul, you also address all of those things, and you peel back the layers so that you can rebuild something new, something better, something in alignment with yourself. And you'll know what you want. You become more empowered with yourself. You become more self-assured. You know who you are. You feel more connected with yourself, with your higher self, and all of your decisions and everything that you make. Maybe not all. We're not perfect. We're trying to get there. But this is the process of getting there. And the more that you step in your authentic self and in your light, your authenticity, your values, your purpose, when you're in alignment with that, then everything becomes easier. Everything starts to line up for you. But you have to go through this grossly disgusting transformation, and it is going to be life-changing. It changes everything. Again, it is where you are reborn. And during that metamorphosis phase of cocoon, the caterpillar turning into the butterfly, it is gooey and disgusting and uncomfortable, and we have to go there. We can't fight it. So again, if you feel like you're going through this transition, the dark night of the soul, if you've gone through it again, you still might be processing some of it, or you still might be you're on the out of it, but still going through some transformation. Totally fine. But I always invite everyone to get comfortable with being uncomfortable and not giving your energy to that uncomfortable feeling in a way of being consumed by it and living in that energy. And I know it's really difficult for me. That's the hardest part. But now I'm more aware of when it's happening, and to not go into that dark thought process or into the dark feelings, and to separate myself and go, okay, I know what's happening now, and I can't go there, or I won't let myself go there and become that emotion or that thought or that story that is so powerful and that's coming up and consuming my reality right now. And you just give it time. And the more you give it that kind of attention and awareness, the less it will happen. It will start to diminish. It will start to fade away. So that is the process. It is the process of dismantling. It is the process of letting go. It is the process of awareness. That is going to create a huge, massive shift so that you can expand and open up for creating your new reality based on, again, your alignment with your higher self and moving into a higher vibrational experience, a higher vibrational state of being. And we shed the old and we step into the new. So for some it could take years, for some it could take less. Everyone has their own journey, their own process, depending on maybe the past or past life or whatever you're going through that needs to be cycled through. But the biggest thing is to be careful with yourself, give yourself a lot of care. If you need to rest, if you need to detach, isolate, yes, do it. Know that this is part of the process, and not to give your energy or your attention to the hard stuff, to see it as something that is there to teach you something, or that it's cycling through, and just let it cycle through. And don't be hard on yourself either. Oftentimes for myself, if I would fall into the ditch, as I call it, I would be hard on myself because I would be good for days or weeks. Oftentimes it was a pattern, actually. I would have maybe a few days that were good and then a week that was bad. But then it would get better, and now I have several weeks that are fantastic, and then maybe one day that's bad. And that one day shows up randomly. I have no idea when. Could be after a month, but it might show up. It could be very strong, but I know how to manage it now, and I can go through that with a lot of ease and with a lot of patience. And there were moments, though, that I would get very angry with myself, or I would almost become a little bit disappointed that I would still fall in these traps, or that it was still coming up. And we can't be hard on ourselves during this process. We have to be very careful with ourselves, give ourselves care, really be gentle with the process as well. Be gentle with ourselves. If it happens, then it happens. We're not falling backwards. We can't be perfectionists, because perfectionism is really unhealthy. We need to let go of that too, which I've gone through myself as well. Not being hard on myself, not expecting results out of things, just being gentle and allowing for it to unfold naturally is so important. So again, not to really have expectations, or not to put a lot of emphasis on, oh, I had a bad day. That's okay. That's okay if you had a bad day. That's okay if you had a bad week. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it. And if you had a bad week, you just go in with yourself and you just feel through the situation, and over time it's going to change. And then you become gentler with yourself, you become more at peace. And a lot of it is, again, heightened awareness. This is where you're going. So you can do the healing work yourself over time. You can go inward and understand yourself and understand what's happening just like that, without having to really search for things or go into it. You can identify what the situation is and let it go in a second. And that in time is going to improve more and more so. And the results, more confidence, more clarity, being able to heal yourself, being able to let go of the past, the traumas, the hurts, the insecurities, the limiting beliefs, the beliefs that we have adopted and carried on or brought into our life based on our outside world. We're basically reprogramming ourselves. So we have to dismantle, and then we're reprogramming something that is, again, more confident, lighter, more creative, freer, joyful, and we become empowered to make the changes within ourselves first and foremost. And we get it. We get it. That's what it's like. And it is the most amazing experience. So do I regret going through that? No, I had to go through that. A lot of us do have to go through that dark night of the soul, but it is necessary. So again, take extra care, be gentle, allow for the energy to move through you. Try not to become those stories. If you do, it's okay. It's okay. It will pass, as everything else does, right? So we need to focus on what we want to feel like as the outcome, how we want to feel in our future, what feels good for us, how we can feel in love energy, love frequency, how we can work with other people and remain in that frequency as well, because that will change and develop more and more as well. So we also need to stay focused on where we're going, where our path is taking us, but always remain in the present, of course. All right, my loves, I do hope that is offering some insight. If you have any stories of your own or even questions, I'd love to hear from you. Leave them below, and I will be seeing you next time. Take care.